Despite being someone who plays video games every day, a real gamer some would say, I wouldn't, I've only played through a handful of JRPGs. Embarrassing, I know. It's also incredibly subjective what even counts as a JRPG. Some people say it's a regional thing. If it's an RPG made in Japan, then it's a JRPG. I mean, it's right there in the name. Japanese role-playing game. Others give it a definition that relies more on the content of the game. Turn-based battles, emphasis on party formation, a general anime aesthetic. But trying to set any kind of rule or guideline to define what any genre will exclude at least one game that feels like it should be included. So what does make a JRPG? Well, maybe we'll learn along the way, together, while I talk about today's subject, Shadow Hearts. The story of Shadow Hearts' development starts in the mid to late 90s. A composer at Squaresoft named Hiroki Kikuta wanted to branch out and direct his own game, but Square's development methods made that difficult. So in 1997, along with some other Square veterans, he founded Sakanoth. Their first game was Kudelka in 1999, a horror-themed RPG. Shortly after the release of Kudelka, Hiroki left Sakanoth and development started on Shadow Hearts. It was released in Japan for the PS2 on June 28, 2001, relatively early into the console's lifespan. Shadow Hearts didn't sell exceptionally well. Its reviews aren't horrible though, most giving it a 7 out of 10 give or take. It plays a lot like a standard JRPG, with two notable exceptions: Sanity Points and the Judgment Ring. The game pulls from Lovecraftian horror, and the Sanity Points, or SP, represent a character's ability to endure the effects of battling the monsters. When a party member's SP hits 0, they go berserk. And when berserk, they act randomly with random targets, sometimes attacking allies or even using your items on the enemy. Sanity was rarely an issue. Only particularly beefy bosses had fights lasting long enough. And even then, there were SP restoring items to use in battle. The Judgment Ring is probably the most unique mechanic in Shadow Hearts. Every time you select an attack, special skill, or use an item, the Judgment Ring appears, and a cursor spins around at once. You press X when the cursor is in the highlighted areas for the action to succeed. Regular attacks can land 3 times, and have a separate hit area for each blow. If you land right on the far edge of a hit, it's a perfect, and will do more damage. There are plenty of ways for the Judgment Ring to be modified. Some enemies have skills that hinder you, making the ring spin faster, or shrink the hit areas. There are also plenty of items to give you the advantage, by making the ring slower or doing more damage at the cost of speeding it up. The hit areas are unique to each attack, being in the same spot every time. This makes it pretty easy to get used to the rhythm of each attack. Special skills only have one hit area, and one or more activation areas. All of them have to be hit for the skill to go off, but only the hit area has a perfect spot. Luckily, a missed skill won't consume any of the MP used to cast it. Items use the ring too, and some of them have bonus areas that will increase the efficacy of the item. Every enemy and party member has an associated element. The 6 elements are paired and diametrically opposed. Enemies will take bonus damage from magic of their opposite element, and less from their own. The 3 pairs are light and dark, water and fire, and earth and air. Regular attacks usually do neutral damage, so magic and other special skills are key to exploiting weaknesses. Outside of battles, Shadow Hearts has 3D characters over a pre-rendered background, which is surprising, given the PS2 was more capable of handling relatively detailed 3D environments. I'm not complaining, I love this style. It's one of those aesthetics that only exists because of developers working around the limitations of the time. Unfortunately, that means it became less common as hardware and developer knowledge improved. What I'm getting at is, I find it very refreshing seeing a game from this era having pre-rendered backgrounds. I don't really know how common that is. The PS2 had a lot of games, but Shadow Hearts is the only one that comes to mind. If you know any more, please tell me, I want to know. Overall, my thoughts on the visuals are hard to summarize. It's obvious that the textures of these models were designed with the inherent blurring of CRT televisions in mind. The best way to describe them is that there's a lot of noise. It's hard to tell exactly what the skin of a lot of the monsters look like. Oddly enough, I think it works in the game's favor a little bit, because of the Lovecraftian influences. These textures make it hard to pin down exactly what you're looking at. It plays into the unfathomable vibes of Lovecraft. A good example is the Death Emperor, a fusion that you see quite often at the start of the game. It looks like its legs are made of ground black pepper. Surely it looked better on CRT, but even then, what's it supposed to look like? Scaly? Rocky? Like a well-seasoned roast? Speaking of horror, Shadow Hearts is supposed to be a horror game, but it takes itself very unseriously at times, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's not like the game ever spooked me. One thing that stands out is the soundtrack. There's such a wide range of great music in the game. A lot of them feel like odd choices when you first hear them, but they really grew on me the more I heard them. And when I say a wide range, I really mean it. Sometimes it's lighthearted or haunting, or sometimes downright silly. The battle music arguably makes or breaks the game. It's the song you'll be hearing for the vast majority of your playtime. That being said, it was an incredibly brave choice for Sacknoth to make this the music for most battles. Trust me, it grows on you, especially when you notice the sick bass line. There's even separate battle tracks for when a character goes berserk, and they're intense. Shadow Hearts takes place in 1913 and opens with a newspaper detailing a brutal murder taking place in Rouen, France. A priest was brutally murdered and his daughter is missing. We cut to a train passing through South Manchu. I assume Manchuria? Some Japanese soldiers are escorting a young girl to Japan when they get slaughtered by this very well-dressed gentleman. She recognizes him, and he introduces himself as Roger Bacon. Before he can abscond, he's interrupted by our hero, and I guess I should just show you.
I was fond of him.
There aren't a lot of these pre-rendered cutscenes in the game, and they've got that shitty late 90s CGI that's a real treat if you're into things that suck. We get thrown into gameplay and make our way past Roger's handiwork in the next car before heading to the roof to confront him again. Everyone get your Bacon jokes out now. Roger Bacon is a recurring character, and it's even funnier knowing he's based on a real guy with the same name. Where most characters would have magic or special skills, our unnamed hero can spend his SP to fuse with a spirit, gaining their stats and abilities. The only available fusion right now is Death Emperor, but he's all we need for a while. On the roof of the train, Bacon blasts our ass in a scripted fight, before we go into another cutscene that screams early 2000s.
What? Down!
When she wakes up, our character tries to get all handsy with her and she runs away. The game introduces him as rude hero, which, yeah, pretty spot on there. It's absolutely baffling that one of our first impressions of this guy is him perving on a kidnapping victim. It's not even 30 minutes into the game and he's already incurred a huge goodwill debt that he'll be paying back for the entire first half of the game. As she runs away, we get a mad headache and some voice tells us to make sure to protect her. We don't have any ibuprofen, so we run after her and she's passed out again. When she wakes up, he tells her that they should stick together because the voice in his head tells him so. Despite him being very obviously mentally unstable, she goes with him and they finally exchange names. We're allowed to choose the names for all of our party members, which is totally a riot. Giving everyone silly names is one of the best parts of older JRPGs. On my first playthrough, I named someone My Ass, which always had great results. But for this go around, I thought it'd be best to go with their real names, so meet Alice and Yuri. In the next area, we have to find a handle to open a sluice gate and clear a path. And that marks the second time I've had to do that in one of these videos. It takes some time for the water to drain, so Alice gets some rest nearby while Yuri stands guard. It looks like she's having a dream about her dead dad when some guy wearing a fox mask appears in front of Yuri. As it turns out, dead things don't like being dead, and they're pretty pissed off about it. Foxface proceeds to kick our ass in the second scripted loss in the first 45 minutes of the game. Do we really suck that bad? Yuri wakes up alone in some graveyard, and he recognizes it. It's the same one that shows up in all of his nightmares. One of the graves is glowing, and this is how we unlock new fusions for Yuri. When you defeat enough enemies of a certain element, you can come back to the graveyard from a save point and fight the corresponding spirit. Each element has 3 spirits you can get this way. Nearby there are some asshole masks that explain to us the Malice system. They're the Grail, Gold, Sword, and Staff masks. The graveyard is a reflection of the... I can't even read it. The graveyard is a reflection of the darkness in Yuri's mind. So edgy. Whenever we kill a monster, the malice increases, and when it's full, Foxface shows up to teach us the true meaning of Christmas. To clear the malice, you just have to come back to the graveyard every once in a while and fight an enemy. Pretty easy stuff. It builds up slowly enough, and you get this nifty talisman to track it, so I never got caught with my pants down. Alice wakes Yuri up, which brings him back to the real world. After wandering the plains for a while, we eventually find a village. The voice comes back and tries to warn us about it. Whenever the voice speaks to us, the dialogue is all patchy, so we don't get the full message. But it's pretty obvious that the village is bad news though, and we should stay away. Surprisingly, Alice heard the voice too, but without the headache, and she's pretty sure that it's trying to help us. Unfortunately, if we don't go to the walled village, there's no game, so we ignore the warning. The walls and door of the village are covered in talismans, and there are 2 kids at the gate. And it's so obvious they're cannibals, it feels like an insult to my intelligence. The only way it could be more obvious is if they said, "We're going to cook and eat you now." Yuri says, "No red flags here," and they head on in. Everyone we talk to keeps going with the whole cannibal shtick, except for this peddler guy. He's pretty cool. There's an old shrine and a massive pile of human bones at the end of the village. Some old man says that the Black Tortoise God was enshrined there until about 6 months ago, and that it kept the spirits in check. It's been replaced by something called Yamaraja. Now that it's gone, they can do whatever they want, even pretend to be people. He then says, "We're going to cook and eat you," and it finally dawns on them that they might be in danger. Those 2 kids from earlier introduce us to the mayor, whose house we'll be staying in for the night. The mayor says, "We're going to cook and eat you," and Yuri plays dumb, which honestly isn't too hard for him. Later that night, the 2 kids break into the room for a midnight snack, which doesn't even work because we're just pretending to be asleep, hiding under our blankets, playing our Game Boys. If the others found out they tried to eat us early, they'll be killed and eaten themselves, and if we escape, the same thing will happen. They decide that if they're going to be killed either way, they might as well eat us while they have the chance. Despite turning into cat demons, they're still just stupid kids, so we put them down pretty easily. Now that the jig is up, the village shows its true form. There's blood and meaty growths everywhere. If you've seen War of the Worlds, the 2005 movie, not the hour-and-a-half long Amazon commercial, it kinda reminds me of that. All of the villagers are gone, and there's a seal on the gate keeping us from leaving. Desecrating the shrine to the Yamaraja will break the seal, but there's another seal on the shrine, one that we can only clear by killing the mayor. She turns invisible and fucks off somewhere in the village, so we can't get her. To try and catch her, we have to run around pressing X like an idiot. That seal on the gate is only one way though, and after a few attempts, a couple new people come through. One is an old Taoist adept and exorcist, Zhuzhen. A nearby village hired him to come investigate. He drops some exposition about some guy named Dehuai. You'll be hearing more about him later. The other man is Mei Wan. He's an acupuncturist and is really useful. He upgrades your weapons. You can either increase the size of a weapon's hit areas, or increase its damage. Upgrading damage lowers the hit areas, so if you max both, it ends up canceling out the size changes. The only problem is that he's a caricature of an older gay man, and serves as a reminder that this game came out in the early aughts. Whenever you get acupuncture with the men, the screen goes black and we get some dialogue about him being a little too forward with them. Either way, the cat and mouse game with the mayor isn't working out, but Zhuzhen has a plan. He's brought some catnip laced with fentanyl that makes her go hide inside the house. We're gonna use it to smoke her out, but Zhuzhen makes us go find a bowl and a torch, even though he can make fire whenever he wants. Doing so starts her fight. And after beating her, she says we'll never understand the pain of giving birth only for them to be devoured. And I mean, yeah, I guess not. Up next is the Yamaraja fight, and this is the first real boss of the game. He's got attacks that hit everybody and fucks with your judgment ring. It's still pretty easy assuming you've got a brain in your head. Speaking of not having a brain, now's a good time for a break to share my first experience with Shadow Hearts. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up in a farmhouse, one with a basement. And I don't mean one of those nice finished basements, the ones where you find a fridge dedicated to just soda. It looked like the hospital from the first Silent Hill game. Needless to say, I didn't like going down there. One day, my dad had to go down to the basement, and when he came back up, he had this moldy, water-damaged game that he found on a shelf down there. It was weird because my grandmother owned the house before us, but I could not imagine her buying it. I don't even think there was a PS2 in the building. Despite thinking there was a 50% chance of it being haunted, I booted it up anyway. I didn't really get it. I had never played a JRPG before, and I had no point of reference for the whole class party dynamic. The concept of Alice being a healer or Zhuzhen being a mage was totally lost on me. I had them smacking the enemies for 3 damage as if I was doing some kind of challenge run. Anyway, eventually I lost to the Yamaraja, and I hadn't even saved yet. And instead of playing the first hour of the game again, I said, fuck it, I'll just go play through Ratchet and Clank for the 14th time. And Shadow Hearts sat on the shelf for the next 14 years. So the Yamaraja is dead, and the village has turned back to normal. All the villagers are still dead though. Zhuzhen and our group go our separate ways, but not before you can drop some more exposition on us. Someone had to have taken the Black Tortoise seal, which is actually just a small picture depicting the spirit. Alice wonders if it was Roger Bacon, and Zhuzhen thinks that he's involved, but not specifically the one who did this. It's around here that Yuri kinda loses the plot a bit. He thinks that he killed Bacon on the train, and I don't even know where he got that idea. We watched the same cutscene, and at worst, he could just assume he partially blinded him. Zhuzhen wasn't even there, and he knows better than to think he's dead. He warns them that both of them have powers that normal people would be suspicious of, and to not go around flaunting them. The idea of trying to hide their powers never really comes up again for the rest of the game. And with that, we go our separate ways and head to Fengshan. We cut to another person's perspective, the Japanese Lieutenant Colonel Kawashima. She's on the train that Bacon went absolutely ham on. So stupid. She's under the impression that Alice was responsible for the massacre until a soldier tells her that a survivor saw Yuri and Bacon on the train before shit went down. She orders for soldiers to be sent to Fengshan and the surrounding cities to look for Alice. Then we switch perspectives again, which is honestly my biggest gripe with Shadow Hearts, especially at the beginning. It feels like every 10 minutes you get whisked away to bumfuck nowhere to watch a conversation between people, and half the time they're talking about shit that's already been said. Or it's a reveal that you've already figured out because you have a brain. It's like Shadow Heart refuses to let you be surprised by any plot point in the whole game. Well, except for one, but that's a lot later. This perspective shift finally introduces us to Daehwai, this crusty old guy that's half lizard or something. Bacon appears in the room, and long story short, Daehwai is trying to complete some grand ceremony, the Demon's Gate invocation. He's the one who sealed the Black Tortoise, and Alice is needed to complete the ritual. He's tried the ceremony before, but he was stopped, losing half his body in the process. Daehwai didn't ask Bacon for help finding Alice, but he's doing it anyway. It's obvious that they can't stand each other. The conversation is filled with these backhanded compliments, and generally, it's very passive-aggressive. Bacon may be helping, but he definitely has his own agenda. It kind of feels like he's only helping out because he's just curious about what's going to happen. We're in Fengshan now, but the Japanese military beat us here. Alice is sleeping on a bench, and a puppy runs up to them. The voice in Yuri's head warns him that the dog is bad news before it runs off. We duck into a shop to buy supplies, and meanwhile on the roof, a spy reports that she's set up multiple bombs. That probably won't come up again. Once we're done in the shop, a radio broadcast warns people of a young white girl that murdered a bunch of soldiers. The shopkeep puts 2 and 2 together and starts freaking out, so we get the hell out of there. Right as we leave, the bomb goes off right outside. The spy jumps down to make sure we're alive before some soldiers recognize us. Getting caught is bad for business, so we all hide in the sewers. She hasn't told us yet, but the spy's name is Margaret, and in the 5 seconds she was out of our sight, she disappeared. Later, while looking for the exit, we find the possibly nefarious dog that we were warned about. And instead of saying, hey, that voice warned us before that this dog might be sketchy, he just said, this dog's a fucking idiot. Off screen, but still only like 8 feet away, Margaret gets beat up by some big frogs. Turns out getting your ass beat in a scripted loss makes you a good fit for our group, so she joins the party. There's some kappas between us and the exit, and these guys are a riot. I thought this was supposed to be a scary game. The plan is to pop out of the sewer at an airfield and steal a plane and get the hell out of Dodge. Well, that's all good and dandy, but moments after leaving the sewer, every single plane explodes. The explosion wasn't our good friend Marge's fault. Why did I write that? I made her name Marge and whatever. The explosion wasn't our good friend Margaret's fault this time. That dog is here again, and he's glowing red now, and that's how you know he's evil. Yuri once again demonstrates that he's playing a completely different game than us, because he thinks he kicked Bacon's ass so hard that he turned into a dog. I'm not even joking there, that's what he says. But no, the dog isn't Bacon. His name is Tiny, and he's one of Daehwai's underlings. Tiny turns into a not-so-tiny dog and tries to turn us into paste. He does quite a bit of damage, but doesn't have a whole lot of health. It's imperative to know how to exploit elemental weaknesses at this point, and use everyone's skills to your advantage. He's of the fire element, and conveniently enough, the sewer had a lot of water enemies, so if you were diligent, you would have Yuri's water summon, the Man Dragon, to do extra damage with its magic. If you don't have the Man Dragon, worry not. One of Margaret's skills changes an ally's regular attacks to the water element. After Tiny's dead, we still have the same issue of there being no planes left, but Margaret finds an old shitty biplane. This thing barely runs, but the sirens are going off and we have no choice but to skedaddle. Kawashima is still after us, and she knows our plane won't make it very far, and sets a trap for us in Dalian. She then looks into the camera and says, shit, that's a spoiler, sorry. Cut to a dream scene with young Yuri and his dad. His dad's planting that season's crops, and Yuri asks why he always has to leave for work every fall. His dad says, my boy, surely I'll be back before the winter. Alice wakes Yuri up and, oh shit, the plane's going down. Hard cut to the town of Dalian, and we've all washed up at the dock. Convenient. At the inn, the sea mother is trying to help a young man who's been afflicted with Lily's curse. For whatever reason, we go out at night, and of course Alice gets hit with the curse. If we don't do anything about it before sundown the next day, she'll die. The sea mother finds us, and luckily she's hired someone to help. In the meantime, she tells us about Lily, and long story short, Lily was a young woman whose fisherman father was presumed lost at sea after a bad storm. She begs the blue dragon, the spirit of the area, to return him to safety. The spirit grants her requests, but it's a bit of a prankster, so it swaps her voices, and the only way for her to get her voice back is to kill him. Ultimately, she can't bring herself to do it, and he ends up being killed at sea again, but she wasn't the one who killed him, so she doesn't get her original voice back either. Her father's will to help his daughter was so strong that he came back as a zombie, just so she could kill him. Even then, she can't make herself do it, and takes her father's body and walks into the ocean. Lily has come back as a vengeful spirit, cursing whoever she comes across, as well as causing a bunch of monsters to show up every night. The man the sea mother hired is here, and holy shit, it's the big man himself, Zhuzhen. He thinks he knows how to stop Lily, but we need to stop the monsters first. Before that, perspective switches to Kawashima again, as she's learning from an informant what's going down in Dahlia. In walks Kato, more like Chato. I mean, goddamn, look at this guy's chin. Kawashima tells the goons to kill that informant, and Kato practically pisses his pants. She tells him to get a boat ready. Any old boat will do. JRPG fans, please tell me, is it normal for these games to switch perspectives this often? I mean, we haven't even met these guys yet, and we've had 2 or 3 scenes with them already. Back to Dalian, and we need to find the magic circle that spawns the monsters, and oh, there it is. Now it's time to fight the Wind Yamaraja, and this guy's a dirty liar. You'd think he'd be the wind element and thus weak to earth magic, so I throw rocks at him until... At this point I thought, hey, he sure was throwing a lot of rocks for a wind enemy. Is he actually Earth? And yeah, despite his name, he's weak to wind. Just because I was curious, I went looking in the bestiary, and sure enough, the Earth Yamaraja was the water element. Can't have shit in Shadow Hearts. The second attempt goes much better. Alice is feeling better, but there's obviously something sinister going on. First the Black Tortoise of the north, and now the Blue Dragon of the east. Daehwai is definitely targeting the gods of each direction, and Alice is the key to his plan. 15 years ago, he tried a ritual that would turn the world upside down, but obviously the world's still around, so someone managed to stop him. If he's trying to do it again, then we need to head to Shanghai and stop it. Go by land and we'll run into too many Japanese soldiers. We can't go by air either, since Yuri suddenly developed a fear of flying. We don't have a boat to use, but as quickly as the problem is presented to us, it's already solved. Kawashima walks in and offers to let us use her boat. She's pretending to be a smuggler. Margaret's pretty suspicious of this smuggler who conveniently showed up in bumfuck nowhere. And Zhuzhen says, yeah, but if we don't go with them, there's no game. So we get on board. Fast forward to the next evening, and Yuri's turning green from seasickness. Which is stupid, because he could probably just turn into the man dragon spirit and swim alongside the boat. And this has been bothering me for a while. He can turn into all these different spirits, like this guy with 4 arms, but all he uses them for is punching ghosts and shit. Alice tells Yuri that he's changed a lot since they met, and I guess that's true. 2 hours ago he was an edgelord pervert, and since then he's been promoted to vague dumbass. The boat's been going in circles for a few hours now, and once we notice, Lily attacks. The sea mother jumps out of the cargo hold and drives her off. Zhuzhen prepares a ritual to put her to rest, and we do a couple of battles to kill time before the real battle starts. The fight's pretty easy, and when you attack her she sounds like an old man, which is a nice touch. Daehwai shows up and turns her into a gross squid monster, but that fight's easy too. Daehwai leaves and the sea mother dies. They say it's because sealing Lily used up all of her power, but I'm pretty sure it's because she's 90 and got struck by lightning earlier. Back in Daehwai's tower, he's telling his disciple Wugui that Zhuzhen is in the way of getting Alice, and sends him after them. The scene changes again, and this time it's a flashback from Zhuzhen, 15 years ago in Shanghai. He's just had his ass kicked by Waluigi, whose wardrobe hasn't changed at all in 15 years. Yuri's dad shows up and picks a fight with Luigi and his goons. You play as him for this fight, and it's completely trivial. He's like level 1,000,000 or something. He finally introduces himself as Ben Hyuga. His best friend Zhang Yun Zhen owns a shop nearby that they go rest at. Now in the present day, Zhuzhen is telling the story to Alice. He knows what happened to Yuri's dad, but he hasn't had the courage to tell him yet. When she asks about it, Zhuzhen dodges the question, but anyone with 2 brain cells to knock together has probably figured out by now that he's the one who stopped Daehwai 15 years ago, and probably died doing it. Now it's time for a bit of solo adventure with Zhuzhen. You have control of him for about 30 seconds before getting ripped away to another Kawashima scene. She's talking to a lieutenant, Suketani. After seeing what we're capable of on the boat, she's realized that getting Alice might be a bit more complicated than expected, so she's holding off for now. The Japanese military seems to be less cohesive than we thought, because Suketani reveals that her loyalties are in question and she's being investigated. Daehwai has also managed to seal the Red Phoenix and only the White Tiger remains. It's sealed in a temple in Wuhan, and the soldiers they send to investigate never came back. She decides to get us to go there and clear it out for him. Things are a little dire back at Zhen's bar. That weasel Wugui is the owner now, and Zhen begs patrons for money while his daughter plays the erhu. It sounds pretty nice. Zhuzhen challenges him for ownership of the bar, and this battle's such a wash. Wugui absorbs all magic damage, and Zhuzhen's basic attack is completely hopeless, doing 3 damage if you're lucky. He also has a spell that inflicts instant death. It's at this point that I feel like Saknoth is playing a prank on me by making me play characters that perpetually have their heads up their asses. Yuri's here now, which is great because Wugui's instant death move only works on people with brains. We send Wugui running back to Daehwai, and Yuri has a message for him. Hide your girly magazines. I'm not even joking here, that's what he says. What's even weirder is the fact that this ends up being important later. Zhen recognizes Yuri as a dead ringer for Ben, which means the jig is up. He learns more about his dad from them, and Zhuzhen has a confession to make. He killed Ben. He goes on to say that Ben was an assassin sent to stop Daehwai. His exact words were, he put his life on the line and stopped the cursed valorization. Which is cool and all, but it doesn't really explain why Zhuzhen killed him. From the story, it sounds like Daehwai did it, but what do I know? Kawashima comes in and says we need to go to the worst dungeon in the whole game, because both the Japanese troops and Daehwai's men are on their way there. We get there before them, and this cat dude, Zhao Fong, wants to make us go through the 3 trials before we can see Jifa. Zhuzhen says, come on man, you know me, but he's gonna make us do it anyway. And I hate this part. The party is split into 2 groups of 2 for the challenges. You have to make your way through 3 trials, each one consisting of a maze and a boss fight that you must complete with different restrictions each time. The first challenge is Yuri and Zhuzhen, and you can't use item, which isn't too much of an issue, but the maze is so bad. The rooms all look the same, and the encounter rate is pretty high. In my first playthrough, each of these mazes took a good 20-30 minutes, even running from every encounter. I usually avoid guides unless I'm pretty stumped, but this time I didn't even play around and preemptively found a walkthrough. I also fought every random encounter in this playthrough, because pretty soon I'm gonna need every level up I can get. The boss of this challenge is pretty easy, at least compared to what's coming up. In the second challenge, our magic is sealed away. For Margaret, that's fine, but Alice is kind of useless. I usually just had her defend or use items. I lost my first attempt against this boss. He hit us with some nasty status effects. Swapping some equipment around to get some status immunity made the fight a lot easier. Meanwhile, Yuri and Zhuzhen are having a nice bonding moment, reminiscing about Yuri's dad before the third challenge opens up for them. It's a real ball buster. You're back to Yuri's group and can't use abilities or items in battle. Zhuzhen is a complete non-entity here. If Yuri dies, it's a guaranteed game over. Zhuzhen does bare minimum damage, so the best thing he can do here is defend and soak up hits for Yuri. It feels like you just have to hope that the boss targets Zhuzhen long enough to win, which is what happened on the attempt I won. While we go meet Jifa, Kawashima and Kato are waiting outside. They've got soldiers on standby in case anything happens. Suketani warns Kato that the investigative committee is up to something. We finally meet Jifa, and shit hits the fan so fast. Daehuai possesses Zhao Fong, takes the white tiger picture, kills everybody, nabs Alice, and leaves. Zhao Fong is dead, and Master Zifa is barely alive. He uses his power to bring us all back, killing him. He is kind enough to teleport us back to the entrance of the trials too. Now, I know what's coming next, so I equipped Leonardo's bear on everyone, a trinket that nullifies instant death. Wugui is here to keep us from leaving, and he turns into the War Yamaraja. He still absorbs magic, and uses a party-wide instant death attack. I'm pretty sure it still doesn't work on Yuri here, but if Jujin and Margaret had been affected by it, the fight would have been much harder. Bacon teleports in, blasts Yuri without a word, and grabs Wugui. Back in Shanghai, we finally learn the truth about Kawashima. Her unit rescued us from the crumbling temple, and now she wants to team up to take down Daehuai. The gang is pretty pissed off about being used, and they don't really want to help the Japanese army stop the only thing keeping them from invading mainland China. We're still gonna go after Daehuai, but not because they told us to. Despite not wanting to help her, after we leave she arranges a key to end up in our hands. Back in Kawashima's office, the jig is up. Suketani is confronted by Major Kutsugi, someone in charge of investigating her. They plan on charging her with treason, and since Suketani has been loyal to her, they get rid of him. Kato finds Suketani, and before he dies, he tells him that the key is hidden on the smuggling ship. Outside, the streets are filled with Japanese soldiers. Kato tells us about the key, and we have to fight our way to the boat. The key opens up the only entrance to Daehai's stronghold. To progress, we have to head back to the hotel, and Kawashima's in trouble. Kato's hurt, and they're gonna execute her. Luckily for her, we showed up just in time. This next scene is interesting. It's a conversation between Alice and Daehuai. He's got her locked up in some machine, and you have to choose the correct dialogue choices to avoid being shocked. If you choose all three correctly, a new dungeon opens up on the map. It's Kowloon Fortress, based on the real-life Kowloon walled city. You can only go there before you beat Kuihai Tower, but there's no indication that you've unlocked this area, and instead of using the map, the game just dumps you into Kuihai. So despite unlocking it, I didn't even know Kowloon was an option until after I beat the game. The front gate of the tower is defended by the stone Yamaraja. It's weak to water and doesn't put up much resistance. We find the votive picture of the black tortoise on the ground outside, and that's the key to navigating the tower. The whole gimmick of the dungeon is grabbing the 4 pictures and using them as keys to open up other areas. Some spots need a specific picture, while others will take any of them. This area also contains a hidden item that's super important near the end of the game, the erotic book. Yeah, that throwaway line telling Daehuai to hide his girly mags ended up being relevant. Long story short, you need the erotic book to complete the side quest for Yuri's ultimate summon that also has the hardest boss fight in the game. You cannot make this shit up. So what is this ritual that Daehuai is trying to pull off? Everyone's assuming he's trying to perform the Demon's Gate Invocation, a ritual that he would use to destroy Japan, but has the risk of destroying the whole world if he fails. Turns out, he's trying to summon the Seraphic Radiance. We don't know much about it, but considering that Jujin shit himself at the mention of it, we can assume it's no good. We beat Daehuai once, but he flees to the roof of the tower to complete the ritual. At the same time, Kawashima and her men begin storming the tower. On the roof, he turns into the Yamaraja of Calamity. He can silence and petrify, and the fight goes on long enough that sanity starts to become a concern. I wasn't paying much attention and let both Jujin and Alice go berserk, but I managed to end the fight before it got real bad. Turns out, we should have aimed for the head, because Daehuai manages to use the last of his strength to activate the machine for the ritual. Bacon shows up again and finishes the ritual for him. There's no way in hell that we can fight it, so Yuri has to fuse with it to try and calm it down. It wasn't enough though. The Seraphic Radiance was too powerful, and he was consumed. It destroys Shanghai before disappearing.
It was like a scene from hell, one of our own making. And that night was the last time I ever saw him.
The rest of the game takes place in Europe 6 months later. Alice and Jujin are making a living in Prague as traveling exorcists. This is where the game starts to open up a bit. Up until now, the game has been a one-way trip. You couldn't go back to areas once the story moved on from them, but now we're free to go wherever we want. There aren't any side objectives yet, but it's nice to be able to stretch our legs, so to speak. While they're resting at a pub after work, a man named Terry comes in looking for them. He's from a village a few days east of there, and it's got a monster problem. For about a month now, supernatural monsters attack the village every night, and the nearby abandoned castle has been showing signs of being inhabited again. The plan is to wait until Margaret returns, then head out, but before we can do that, Terry is attacked and killed by monsters. There's a suspicious old woman here, but she disappears before the fight ends. They decide that they can't wait for Margaret and leave immediately. In the village of Bistritz, everyone is hiding inside their homes, and a thick fog lingers in the air. We find Terry's house and break the news to Michelle and Nina, his wife and daughter. While we're there, the mayor, Kevin, shows up to introduce himself. He seems pretty friendly, which is a huge red flag. In my experience with these games, I've learned that people are only friendly for two reasons. They're about to ask you to fix their water heater, or they're evil. Before Terry died, the family was planning to move to America. Terry was good friends with a professor there that would help them find work. He would also send them gifts from America, one being a leather bag he got from the professor. Nina also mentions the castle, but Michelle tells her to stop making up stories. We go back outside and the fog turns red, bringing monsters with it. We head over to Kevin's house and peek through the windows to see Live, Laugh, Love hung up on the wall, realize he's surely up to no good, and flee back to Michelle's house. Nina is running the shop while she rests, and she tells us about Kevin and the castle nearby. Kevin keeps pestering her mom and asking to see the gifts that Terry sent them. The castle gets brought up again, and Nina insists that she knows the master of the castle that's been abandoned for 300 years. She saw a winged person flying towards it and got lost in the woods chasing after them. She was saved from some wolves by the master of the castle and brought back home. Michelle told her not to tell anyone because the villagers think he's a vampire, and if they know she's been around him, they'll think she's one too. Nina insists that he's really nice, so we head there to investigate. The lobby has such a weird ass layout. It's like that MC Escher print done from memory, while some invisible guy walks around. To progress, we have to read these coffins and light up the torches in alphabetical order based on the names. We finally catch up to him, and yeah, he's a vampire. Allegedly, he's a good vampire, which honestly is such a huge cop-out. He says they don't drink blood and aren't weak to the sun or crosses or anything. At that point, he's not even a vampire. He's just a guy who lives a long time. Anyway, he's been asleep for the past 300 years until some crazed monster moved into his castle. He tried to drive it out, but it was too strong, so he sealed it at the top floor of the tower. He's one of our party members, and that means we get to pick his name. The default name is Keith Valentine. I'm told that it's a reference to Vincent Valentine from Final Fantasy VII, and yeah, I can see that. And just like in Final Fantasy VII, this Valentine is staying in my party as much as physically possible. This guy's great. He's got a cool sword, fun abilities, and he casts his spells like a dork. Look at him, what a dweeb. I will not accept any Keith Valentine slander in the comments. He is perfect. The three of us head back to the village to get to the bottom of this monster nonsense. And when we get back, everything's gone to shit. On paper, Kevin was digging for gold, but he and Terry were researching the vampires of the castle instead. Once the opportunity to move to America presented himself, Terry lost interest in the research. During their research, they found a way to summon monsters, and that's where they've all been coming from. That leather bag from the professor had some gold dust in it, and Kevin needed it for some reason. He takes Michelle captive, and since we're good Samaritans, that will not stand. We go to Kevin's house, which is literally across the street. There's like 6 houses in this town. He's so mad we don't have the gold dust that he turns into a dog that looks like it just got hit by a truck. This fight wasn't as easy as I remembered, so before I know it, Alice goes berserk, Zhuzhen has a heart attack because he's 90, and Keith gets down to 3 HP. To my horror, Alice targets Keith with an attack, but she's so shit at melee that it doesn't do a single point of damage. Instead of healing Keith or curing Alice's berserk, I go for a Hail Mary attack, and my complete lack of planning pays off once again as I stumble into victory. Nina says, "Thanks for saving my mom, please take this gold dust that Kevin wanted so bad." And we say, "You stupid kid, this isn't gold, it's wheat seeds. Don't ever talk to us again." Now that we've saved the whopping 5 people of the village, it's time to move on to more pressing matters, like that scary monster in Keith's castle. He says that it looks like a man, but turns into a demon in combat. Alice and Zhuzhen give each other the side eye and say, "Surely that can't be Yuri, right?" He's at the top of an unnecessarily tall tower in the castle. Seriously, it's something like 20 screen transitions, which really isn't a whole lot, but I have to do it twice, which sucks. Yuri's at the top of the tower, but his personality is pretty much gone. He spouts some stuff about his mother and attacks. After doing enough damage to him, Alice finds herself in the graveyard. She talks to the masks and they represent his negative emotions. Yuri's soul has pretty much given up and is beyond the gate in the graveyard. They open up the gate, but in return they will someday take her soul. Past the gate, Yuri's on the hill from his dream about his dad earlier. He's talking like a kid and thinks Alice is his mom. Foxface comes out from behind the tree and explains that the seraphic radiance devoured his soul, and what's left of him wants to die. Long story short, when he fuses with monsters, there's a risk of them taking over, and that terrifies him. Foxface represents his weakness. Yuri's literally digging his own grave, and when Alice tries to stop him, Foxface flips out and decks her. This pisses him off, but the two get into a slugging match. Alice manages to bring him to his senses enough to start a proper battle. This fight honestly pissed me off so much. He has an attack that reduces you to 1 HP, and he just kept doing it over and over and over again. I would heal, go down to 1, heal again, 1 HP again. It got to the point that I assumed I was doing something wrong, and that he was going to use that move whenever possible. I just started trying to thug that shit out, but he had too much health for me to finish it before dying. But no, I had it right the first time. I just got super unlucky, and he chose the fuck you attack 5 times in a row. After defeating him, Foxface's mask falls off to reveal Yuri's face, not his dad. Then he disappears, and Yuri's back to himself. In a rare moment of clarity, Yuri says, "Man, I sure am stupid," and Alice doesn't even have the energy to disagree with him. The next 5 minutes are mostly just angsty dialogue about his soul and shit, and then they both wake up in the real world. Yuri says, "Welcome aboard, Keith," and we get teleported to the exit of the castle. Usually that would be pretty cool, skipping the trip down the long-ass tower, but there's an important item in Yuri's cell that we're gonna need later. Now that Yuri has overcome his literal and figurative demons, we can start working towards getting his 3rd level summons. Each summon needs you to find a specific stone to unlock, and that dark summons was at the top of the blue castle. And now that he's not scared of them anymore, whenever he fuses, the animation is more confident and less angsty. Back in Prague, Margaret left us a message: meet her in Ruin. That's the city where Bacon killed Alice's father. Margaret's been looking for leads on Bacon, and it seems like they found one. Alice goes to check on some drunk in the bathroom, but she's attacked by that old woman that killed Terry. We drive her off, but this won't be the last time we see her. Her name's Arcane Olga, and she's one of Bacon's underlings. Margaret got to Ruin before us, but she's not at the inn right now, so we rest for the night. It's time to go check in with the masks. There's a new grave there, and Alice is on the masks hit list now too. And now that Foxface is taken care of, they'll come after us when the malice is full. After our rest, Alice disappears, so Yuri goes off on his own to look for her. You find her behind the church in the alley where her father was killed. Bacon shows up and makes fun of us for needing a girl to rescue us from our mind graveyard. Then Margaret comes to the rescue. The whole gang's back together now, plus a vampire we picked up on the way. Alice and her father were in Ruin to meet someone. A warlock allegedly as powerful as Bacon. They're on a secret mission from the Vatican. Margaret chimes in and she's been looking into Roger Bacon, and again, he's a real guy from the 13th century. He dabbled in pretty much everything. He was a friar, scientist, Oxford graduate, and even dabbled in alchemy. This is where the similarities to the real life Bacon end though. So, elephant in the room, this guy does not look 700 years old. In the 16th century, Bacon was accused of being a witch, probably because he was already 300 years old. He was exiled and more or less disappeared from history. Honestly, he probably got off lucky not being burned at the stake. The only guy in town who knows who Alice and her father were supposed to meet is Father Doyle, but he's since gone crazy and isolated himself in the church. Honestly, as far as standing around talking sessions have been, this one's been the most interesting so far, but all good things have to come to an end. Arcane Olga has been listening in, and it's safe to assume she's gonna kill Father Doyle to keep him quiet. We break into the church, and Doyle assumes these home invaders are here to kill him, and he's only half right. Eventually, we get him to calm down enough to give us the lowdown. In 1890, 3 forbidden books were stolen from the Vatican. They dispatched 2 exorcists to track them down, Alice's father and Father James O'Flaherty. This is where the story of the last game, Koudelka, starts to converge with this story. O'Flaherty's search brought him to Nemeton Monastery, leading to the events of the first game. Long story short, in the canon ending of Koudelka, he dies, but his fate was a mystery to the church. After James's death, Alice's father picked up on the leads he left behind. This led him towards Roger Bacon. Since Bacon is so powerful, they sought out someone who's tussled with him before, who might know his weakness: Cardinal Albert Simon. Before you can tell us where Simon is now, he's struck down by Arcane Olga. Her boss fight isn't hard, it just takes too long, and she disappears before we can finish her off. Before he dies, Father Doyle tells us that the Cardinal is in London. We head there and holy shit, this music is such a strong tonal shift that it gave me whiplash when I first got here. Up until now, the soundtrack has been on a spectrum between spooky and depressive, but this is downright goofy. Down the street, we see some guy in a suit trying to snatch this Joshua kid off the street. After we save him, he and his sister repay us by stealing Margaret's wallet. At a nearby bar, the owner tells us that we're probably part of the London Rats, a gang of kids that makes a living stealing. He's not here right now, but we get to name their leader Hallie, so you know he's going to be a party member. The entrance to their hideout is under a door. Yeah, real hidden. On the top floor, the kids give us that wallet back, minus 20 bucks because they stopped at McDonald's on the way back. He also gives us a crucifix, the best trinket in the game. Equipping it makes a character immune to all status effects. There's 4 in the whole game, they're all super useful for the tougher bosses. These kids are less of a gang and more just a handful of orphans scraping by. There's an orphanage in town, but all the kids who go there disappear. Hallie shows up and offers to help us find Simon as thanks for saving Joshua. A guy named Knowledgeable Carl tells us that Simon owned a mansion nearby. When we get there though, we find that the mansion that used to be Simon's is now the orphanage where the kids keep going missing. We just walk inside despite it being the dead of night, and off-brand Goro Majima is just standing in the lobby like a creep. His name is Jack, and he bought the mansion so he could start an orphanage. Margaret says, if this is really an orphanage, then where are the kids? And Jack says, what are you talking about? It's 3 a.m., they're all in bed. We ask around town about Jack, and at best, they say he smells bad, and at worst, they say he's a quack doctor. While we were out looking for clues, they found the hideout and grabbed all the kids. This makes Hallie so mad that the whole building starts to shake. He has ESP powers, and that's apparently why his mother abandoned him. 2 of the kids are easy to rescue. They're just on standby in a side room. But to rescue the oldest, we have to run around reading journals to get to codes to various doors. Jack's been doing experiments on orphans to try and bring his mother back to life. He plans to use Chris as a vessel for her soul. Hallie's powers go nuts again, interrupting the ritual, and that damn voice talks to us for the first time in a while. Hallie recognizes the voice though. It sounds just like his mother. Jack's not too thrilled about his mom still being dead and attacks us. For once, he just fights us normally instead of turning into a monster like most bosses. The ritual wasn't completely stopped though, and there's a second fight with the malformed mother clone. The fight goes on for a good 8 minutes and I barely squeezed out a win. Hallie's mom has the same powers that he does, and she was locked up in a mental hospital because of them. Since there are no leads on Simon at the moment, it's time to bust her out of prison. My main party at this point has pretty much solidified itself as Yuri, Keith, and Alice, but the option for adding Zhuzhen to the party is almost enough to make me swap them in. The big man appears! Capital B, capital M. This script is getting disgustingly ungodly long, so this dungeon is getting expedited. Long story short, we fight our way through the institution, which seems to have defected since they're working with Bacon now. The guy in charge turns into a pregnant woman for a boss fight. Don't know why he did that. We can't get through the door to the last cell, but Hallie can squeeze through great. His mom is on the other side. She's conscious but not responding to anything. While Yuri and Keith are off looking for the key, Bacon and Olga show up. I feel like a broken record saying that people just show up, but that's really all they do. So many times now there's just been a lull in the conversation, and while everyone's standing around kicking dirt, someone just teleports in so the plot can keep moving. Bacon wipes the floor with us, and as he's attacking Hallie, his mother starts to respond. She's fully lucid now, and Bacon reveals that she's Kodelka, the protagonist of the last game. He needs her to unlock the power he needs to fulfill his plan. To save Hallie, she agrees to go with him, and tells us to meet an old man in Wales. He teleports away with her and leaves us to fight Arcane Olga again. We beat her, hopefully for the last time, and wake up back in the London Rats hideout. This part makes no sense. Everyone's acting like we watched Kodelka die, but he just teleported away with her. Either way, Yuri smacks some sense into Hallie so that he'll come with us. Then I never let him in the party again. Kodelka did say something weird before she was taken. She referred to Bacon as the man calling himself Bacon. Alice remembers something about the planned meeting with Simon and runs off to Ruin. She insists on going alone, which is so stupid. She thinks it's weird that Father Doyle didn't come with them to the meeting with Simon. And in the confessional, she finds a stack of documents. In the papers, Father Doyle confesses to selling them out to save himself. There's also a photograph of him with Roger Bacon, except the photo is labeled Father Doyle and Albert Simon. So the Bacon we've been chasing has been Albert Simon this whole time. Albert shows up and reveals more of his plan. He wants to destroy the whole world and start over. He says there's too much evil in the world, with the elite exploiting the poor and whatnot. It's that classic trope of a villain who has valid, genuine criticism of some societal injustice, but they don't want you sympathizing with them too much, so they have the villain do cartoonishly evil shit in their attempts to solve the problem. Bacon doesn't kill Alice, which is odd considering that he doesn't need her now that he has Kodelka. Catastrophic blunder on his part. Fast forward to the Nematon Monastery, and there's this weird spaceship-looking building. The door isn't locked, and the inside is full of sci-fi crap like a treadmill and a vending machine. Nobody's home, so we head up to the monastery proper. As we're looking around, some old guy who looks like he just got done mini-golfing at a retirement home walks up and just joins the conversation. I have a hard time describing his theme. You should be hearing it right now. Partway through, this choppy vocalization starts. It sounds so odd that I assume it's an emulation error, and no, it just sounds like that. He's been more or less talking nonsense, and when Alice asks who he is, the naming screen comes up. Before we can type anything, he interrupts us and chastises us right through the fourth wall. I'm filled with this paradoxical feeling of both relief and regret that this guy won't be a party member. Players of Koudelka recognize this guy as the real Roger Bacon. He was in the first game, so the reveal that Albert Simon has been pretending isn't that much of a surprise for returning players. He invites us inside and we start to give Roger the lowdown, and as soon as we bring up Simon, he gets serious. Simon was a student 300 years ago, and one of his best. Albert wasn't a big fan of the ruling class back then, which is an opinion too woke for the church, so they imprisoned and tortured him. Bacon wants us to meet him in the monastery ruins, but before we can do that, I run around getting all the stones for Yuri's level 3 fusions. Sorry Roger, I have to run all the way back to Prague and give this guy some toilet paper. He's been on the toilet for a week already. Now that the chores are done, it's time to enter the ruins. Alice collapses for a moment, probably because the place is so evil. The door to the caves has a judgment ring carved on it, and someone opened it already. This dungeon's a real pain. Only because of the backtracking needed to get an item that unlocks the special fusion soon. It involves a series of puzzles to make a light burn a specific color. The whole thing is optional, and it's not even the best fusion in the game. I do it anyway, cause what kind of guy would I be if I didn't do the optional content? Ignore Kowloon. Now's also a good time to take care of those damn masks. Usually they're really strong and not worth fighting, but that kid Joshua gave us the Oath Grail. The Oath Grail severely weakens one of the masks, and defeating it will in turn weaken a different one. This means that we can fill up our malice and run from encounters until we get the good mask. Each mask gives something like 10 XP in every fusion element, which is great for getting the third level of each without having to grind out dozens of each enemy. It also has some story implications, but we'll touch on that later. Simon is at the top of this extremely long staircase, which in real life would be a great idea, because by the time we get up there, we'll be out of breath, and all it would take to kill us is a light breeze. Simon and Koudelka, see, she's not even dead, are at the top. Those 3 forbidden books have been pretty much causing every problem we've been dealing with so far. Daehwai used the pulse track to summon Seraphic Radiance, but that was a wash, considering the spirit is currently in Yuri's lower intestine. The Emigre document was used by both Patrick from the last game and Jack. It has the power to create life from nothing. I ate those foods. And now Simon wants to use the Codex of Luri to summon the Other God to cleanse the whole planet. Yuri says, "You can't destroy the world, that's where I keep all my stuff." Simon says bet and fuses with Amon. Despite being built like a chicken, this guy's got some sick-ass attacks. First there's Demon Rays, an attack that would feel right at home in Final Fantasy VII, where he shoots out a laser beam with a delayed explosion. Next there's Atomic Dust, where he literally drops an atom bomb on the party. Alice's group heal is pretty much mandatory here, with Keith distributing SP and MP items every turn. Meanwhile, I've got Yuri fused with Foron just going buck wild. We've beaten Albert Simon, but Yuri mogging everyone else generated enough power to complete his plan. Simon declared his victory and flees, but he's obviously wrong. I mean, look how much time left there is in the video.
Achieve it. Behold! Worms who convicted me in Nuremberg 400 years ago. Behold the fruits of your folly. This light, this storm, now is the end of the world! Oh, glorious throne of the Lord on high, Yamato. This is indeed the signpost to a new tomorrow. The medium by which God shall bestow a new future on a world despoiled by human corruption. Oh God, at last the time has come. From the distant reaches of the universe and time, descend now upon this earth. Thousands upon thousands before me have tried, but failed. But I am the one who will finally achieve it! What is it? The float has risen. There's nothing you can do to stop it now. Son of a... 7 days from now, God shall descend to Earth. You can wave your fists all you want, it will change absolutely nothing! Force of all living things, all will be stopped. Soon, death will rain down upon the earth like manna.
We're back at Bacon's house, and he drops some bombs on our heads. That castle, Neem, also known as the Neemito Float, was built by ancient visitors from space. It acts as a lure to attract God from the M72 Nebula. That's right, folks. Capital G God is an alien, and Albert's going fishing. In 7 days, God will reach Earth and destroy every living thing on the planet. Our only hope is to destroy the float before it gets here. In an extreme stroke of luck, Bacon just finished inventing his teleporter. Koudelka survived the whole ordeal under the monastery and is currently chilling back in London. We head back there to check up on them while Bacon is finishing calibrating the teleporter. Chris says, "Would you like to change party members?" which is an odd thing for a kid to say. Koudelka and Hallie are having a touching reunion, and she tells him that he's starting to remind her of his deadbeat dad. He somehow isn't offended by this at all. It's finally time to get an answer on how Yuri's been hearing her voice in his head. The reason he got a migraine every time was because the spirits in his head were all scared of her. The teleporter is almost ready, so we take a rest at Bacon's. Alice wakes up in the graveyard again, but this time things are different. The masks haven't forgotten the deal Alice made with her soul, and they're here to collect. They open the gate behind them, and she's confronted by Atman. Atman? Atman. The one who will take her soul. Yuri busts through the door, something he's definitely not supposed to be able to do. 5 minutes later, Atman is defeated and the soul contract is broken. Alice wakes up in Bacon's lab, and we get a short cutscene of her monologuing about how much she's grown to care about Yuri. We now have access to the final dungeon, but also a handful of side quests that are now open to us. Back in London, the fake orphanage has been turned into a real orphanage. Beat some kids at a game of hide and seek and you get the Emigre manuscript. Reading it will unlock the cave temple and give us a clue on how to reach the end. The dungeon is a series of 4-way junctions, and the correct path will lead you to a chest with Keith's ultimate armor. But there's more to this dungeon that meets the eye. If you read the manuscript a second time, the text has changed. It's now telling you to go through backwards. Doing so leads you to an optional boss, Cherubim. Cherubim loads you up with status effects, and it also absorbs magic damage, so only regular attacks will do anything. It's not easy, especially if you've only got one crucifix like I did. Beating it gives you Yujin's ultimate staff, and puts us one step closer to getting the ultimate fusion for Yuri. Were any of you wondering what happened to Kato and Kawashima? They kinda just disappeared from the story after Shanghai. While if you go to the hotel room in Ruin, Mei Wan will give us a letter from Zhen's daughter, Kuihua. Kato stopped by looking for them, so she's relaying the story to us for him. Shanghai surprisingly wasn't completely wiped out, and Japan is currently controlling it. Kato confesses his love to Kawashima, but before that can be resolved, a message for her arrives. She's being summoned to HQ, but it was a trick. Once she left the room, the soldiers shot her in the back. Fucking bummer. Kato's bringing her ashes to Japan, and Quihua's letter also included unique armor for Jujin that halves water and fire damage. Next side quest is the dollhouse, which is a bit of a misnomer. It's not a house for dolls, it's just a regular house that has a doll in it. The only notable thing here is a crucifix that you get for beating the area's boss. Probably should have done this one before fighting Cherubim. There's a golden bat, no, not that one, in Blue Castle that will give you Keith's best sword if you can do enough damage to it in a duel with just Keith. The next side quest requires you to have both Jujin and Alice in your party. Jujin goes to check out O'Flaherty's grave at the monastery, while Alice and Yuri have a tender moment in the ruins. We also get a flashback of the night Yuri's mother is killed and Yuri's powers awaken. Jujin found a book of rituals at the grave. Similarly to the manuscript, this one unlocks an optional dungeon, the Ancient Ruins. Taking the path normally gives us Alice's ultimate armor, and following the path backwards again leads us to Seraphim, another optional boss. This one's hard too, but with 3 crucifixes and Alice's healing, you can win without too much effort. I hope you remember to pick up the erotic book all the way back in Shanghai, cause now it's finally useful. Talk to Bacon after beating both of the optional bosses, and you'll notice you have the book on you. Since the internet won't be around for another good 80 years, he really wants it. He wants it so bad that he trades us the pulse tract for it. Head back to the Seraphim Arena with the pulse tract, and there'll be a chest containing the Stone of Rebirth. Take that and head to the graveyard, specifically the hill with the tree. When you try to leave, Ben Hugo will come out from behind the tree. Not Foxface, his actual dad this time. He offers to fight us, and we'll get the Seraphic Radiance as a fusion if we win. This is by far the hardest fight in the game, mostly because you're fighting as Yuri by himself. This took me so many attempts, you have no idea. The fight has 2 stages. Once Ben takes enough damage, he'll fuse with Seraphic Radiance. It hits hard and has a magic attack that heals itself. At first I tried to load up on damage increasing trinkets and just thug that shit out. Didn't work. Then I tried using the Lobo fusion and defensive trinkets. It's the tankiest of the fusions. Its charge ability raises physical defense for 5 turns. Even with charge up, I would have to heal pretty much every other turn. So it would go charge, heal, attack, heal, restore mana, heal, and then re-up charge. I was just barely doing more damage than it was healing. There was a bit of a time limit though. There was no room in my item schedule to restore my sanity. If I stopped attacking, it would heal. If I stopped giving myself mana, I couldn't keep charge up. And if I didn't keep charge up, I would die. This attempt went on for a full 30 turns before I ran out of sanity and went berserk. Seraphic Radiance has 5,000 HP, which isn't really a whole lot. Cherubim had 10,000, but that wasn't a solo endeavor. I had to know how close I was after that attempt, so I took out my calculator and added up how much damage I did and how much it healed. 574 health. Truly so close I could taste it. That's only 2 turns worth of attacking. If I'd gotten a few more perfect hits on the judgment wheel, or got a little luckier over the span of 30 turns, that could have been the end. At this point I was getting desperate. There was no way I was going to grind out levels. My pride wouldn't allow it. So I went and got something a little special. There's a fight pit in London where you send someone in to fight waves of monsters for rewards. Sending in Yuri can net you something called the 7th key. The 7th key makes the judgment rings make 7 consecutive spins. This item essentially lets you attack 7 times in 1 turn. 7 attacks would push us way over the 500 damage we were short from the last attempt. But that wasn't enough. I needed a decisive victory. 7th key is already strong enough for our purpose, but combine it with a Star Swallow and something amazing happens. The Star Swallow is an item that temporarily makes all of your attacks critical hits, and I think I'll just show you how it goes. If you weren't counting, that was over 3,600 damage. Words cannot describe the satisfaction of seeing the hardest boss in the game get folded like an omelet. That was a lot of work, but how good is the Seraphic Radiance? Well, I haven't tried it, but there's a pretty good chance Yuri could solo the rest of the game now. This fusion has 3 abilities. For Everyone buffs the entire party's attack and defense, both physical and magical. The second, For Tomorrow, does heavy damage on one enemy and heals the whole party. The final ability, For the Children, is an all-enemy hitting attack that can hit the damage cap on regular enemies. The final dungeon has 5 bosses, and for most of them I just had Yuri use For Tomorrow on repeat, while the 2 houseplants next to him poured blue Gatorade down his throat. So, the final dungeon. Neem. I like this dungeon. The music's great, maybe not as intense as you'd expect for the final area, but have a listen. This first area is very alien. It has a lot of pulsating fleshy bits and spaceship-like hallways. The path forward is blocked off by an electric barrier, and Yuri manages to turn it off in another room, but doing so activates another barrier, separating him and Jujin from the rest of the party. You're then prompted to choose who to temporarily lead the party. I really liked the idea. Playing a short section, maybe fight a boss with only side characters, it seemed fun, but the switch to let him out is only a couple screens away. When you press the button, control switches back over to Yuri and Jujin, and you have to meet up with the rest of the group. I was still optimistic about this scene though. Maybe when we reached the room where the rest of the group was in, they'd be gone, captured, or something. But no, you just meet up with them. I'm not even upset, I'm just genuinely baffled. What was the point of this segment? The whole diversion took less than 5 minutes. And most of that time was me dicking around in the menu, swapping gear around. Either way, the first mini-boss, Soul Block, is up here, and it's a reskin of the Wind Yamaraja. It's immune to physical attacks, which is a total non-issue. The dungeon has 3 floors, each with its own mini-boss. The second floor is a lot like the first, and the mini-boss is tanky, but not difficult if you've got crucifixes. The third floor, however, is a fuck. Not only is it a teleporter maze, which I already hate, but the teleporters are invisible. You just have to walk around until you reach the boss. It felt like it took forever, but looking at my footage, it was only like 5 minutes. The boss is whatever. Everything truly is trivial with Seraphic Radiance. But now it's time to confront Albert Simon once and for all. There's kind of a touching moment before the fight, where Yuri says, "No matter who wins, no hard feelings, yeah?" And Simon goes, "Yeah, I like that." Simon transforms into Messiah, and there's an obvious joke in there about that giant right arm. I just can't put my finger on it. Why is he standing on it though? The head reminds me of the green-banded broodsack, a type of parasite that inhabits birds and snails. It begins its life cycle in snails, and will move into the snail's eye and start pulsating, to attract a bird into eating the snail and the parasite. If it's intentional, it's a nice reference to Simon's plan of luring God to Earth for his own goals. He opens up the fight with the move Holy Chest, a name that I did not laugh at when I first read. It halves the sanity of everyone in the party, which was a total dick move. Since Yuri's fusions use sanity points, he has a huge maximum SP bar, and it takes several items to get it high enough to fuse with Seraphic Radiance. After winning, Simon falls down the stairs, and why does he fall like that? And it really was no hard feelings though, because he says with strong people like us, maybe the world can change for the better. He uses the last of his power to send us into space, so we can fight God before it starts destroying everything. We fight on top of the giant judgment ring, which is a pretty cool set piece. This is also the only cutscene in the game that isn't just a monologue over a slideshow. It was honestly pretty interesting seeing the characters from this angle and having the dialogue advance without pressing anything. And you know what? There it is. That's the answer to the question that I posed at the start of the video. If you fight God, it's a JRPG. We did it, everybody. I love this design. The two-faced upper head, the lower true insect head. The music is really good too. At the beginning of the video I said that the soundtrack was really good, but I take that back. The soundtrack is amazing. Probably one of my favorites. It's so unconventional in many places while still being a pretty good listen. The boss, Meta God, takes a long time, but it also lacks any KO power. Most of the bosses do actually. Eventually, God is defeated, and we get an epilogue telling us what happens to everyone. Keith's had enough excitement for a while, and he goes back home to sleep for a few centuries. Jujin returns to Shanghai, and Margaret goes home to Paris. Hallie and Kodelka go to America to look for his father. Alice and Yuri head to Zurich, where her mother lives. And with that, Shadow Hearts is complete. We get a nice credits roll over Yuri and Alice asleep on the train. Except, that's not really what happened. You see, I've been keeping something from you. Shadow Hearts has 2 endings, and that was the good ending. You see, earlier, when I went around killing the masks, that was actually optional. If you don't kill the masks and then read the gravestone in the graveyard after that, you get the bad ending. In the bad ending, during the fight with Atman, Yuri doesn't show up, and there's no hope of winning the fight with just Alice. Since we didn't beat Atman, the soul's contract wasn't broken, and the masks still have claim over her soul. During the final dungeon, Alice grows weaker after every mini-boss. The fight with Metagod and the epilogue are the same, but instead she passes sometime during the train ride to Zurich. The next game, Shadow Hearts Covenant, continues after this ending. Huge bummer, but it's only par for the course, since this game is based off of Koudelka's bad ending too. Also, both endings have this very jarring cut to a shot explaining that Archduke Ferdinand is killed and the First World War begins. This is unedited, by the way. Well, that was fun. My original conclusion for this video wasn't super in-depth, and there's a few things I left out that I want to talk about, so here's a kind of an unscripted conclusion. I'm gonna get this out of the way. I loved Shadow Hearts. I kind of shit on it a couple times in the video, but that's only because the script was ungodly long and I needed to have a little bit of fun. But yeah, the bosses were a little too easy, I think. The problem is they all lacked any real KO power, and the way the turn order worked is everyone in your party got to go before the boss went again. So you always had a chance to heal up your party in between attacks. I think if they had like minions in boss fights instead of just being one enemy, or maybe a different system for turn order, I think it would have been a lot harder. But the sanity points put kind of a time limit on all of the fights, but it wasn't really an issue. One thing I really liked was Yujin and Yuri's relationship. They had this like love-hate sibling thing going on, and it was just fun. I liked it. I also liked Margaret's special abilities. I never really had her in the party when I didn't have to, but whenever she used a special skill, she used these like spy gadgets, and every time she called them down, she just pulled out a big pink phone, and then the gadget would fall from the sky and she'd use it. Very fun, very, very cartoony. But yeah, thanks for stopping by for another video. This one is absolutely massive. Hopefully the next one will be a lot sooner and maybe not quite as long. Goodbye.
You know how amazing it would be if you and I were totally gay and into each other?
What'd you say?